Hey all, Andy here, helping you build a career you love. Special live office hours on a Friday, because the last couple of weeks my schedule's been a bit of a hot mess, but I wanted to show up for you today, so here I am. And I think I got a nice little package, if my dogs would stop barking, on a job search case study that's actually my personal case study from 19 years ago, or 20 years ago almost, when I actually went back to get my last corporate job. I'm going to give you the 10 steps that I went through, exactly what I did, how it all still applies to you, what might be a little different these days, but it's all pretty much the same. So buckle up, get in the chat, say hi. I always love to see you. My mother is first online. I love it. Aline, great to see you. Harish, Johnny Stevens, Kurt, and everybody else. Let me know where you are watching from. I always love to know what time zone you're in. Some of you, it's like middle of the night, which I totally love. And if you have any questions, put some question marks in front of your questions, because we are going to go to a Q&A after I do the teaching package. If you're in any of my programs, like my job search coaching program, use your bootcamp or hashtag, or if you're a leader, or in your my resume program or interview program or anything, I always love to know what assets you have. All right, today, 10 steps on how I found my job. It's probably more than 10, but I've kind of packaged it up into a teaching outline for you. And just so we dive in, and you're welcome to ask me any questions in the Q&A if I kind of skim over some things. I siphon this down to what I think is important for you to know. So let me paint the picture for you. For those of you that don't know what I did before I became an executive recruiter. I was an information technology and management consultant for about 17 or 18 years almost. I had worked at Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture. I was there 10 years, and then I spent about 5 years at another organization. And after I left that company, the second company, I ended up taking an entire year off. I won't go into all the details, but I quit my job without lining up another job, and I was very determined to take some time off in 2003. And so I actually took the entire year off. So I was re-entering the workforce, and I didn't have a job, and I had earned a mid six-figure, if not higher, level of compensation at that time, and now I was earning zero, and I was going into organizations. So you can imagine that it was a bit difficult to just kind of walk in and get paid a ton of money, especially if you were kind of coming in off the street. So what I did was, the first step that I took, which was actually a mistake. So the first thing you're going to get is the step I took that was the biggest mistake I ever made. And I called the senior vice president of human resources of my previous company, and I asked him, I said, hey, Dan, checking in. We were buddies. We'd worked together for 5 years, and we'd known each other for a while. And I said, can you give me some of the names of the executive recruiters that we work with? And because I want to reach out to them. So silly me, I thought that I could reach out to executive recruiters and that they would actually want to speak with me because, well, I'm me and I'm so awesome that why wouldn't they want to talk to me? And don't they need people like me to fulfill their positions for the companies that they are recruiting for? And so he gave me a name of one of the guys who had recruited for us. I reached out to the guy, and wouldn't you know it, the guy didn't get back to me. So so step number one, which is a total waste of time, if you are anybody, I don't care who you are, contacting third-party recruiters, executive recruiters, and expecting them to help you find a job is not what they do. So bad use of my time was I called the guy, left him a message. Email was obviously available, but it wasn't as popular as it is now, and it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So I called him, I waited, I called him again a week later. I'm wondering what the hell. I called my friend Dan back. I said, Luke isn't getting back to me. What gives? He says, all right, let me come. I'm like, can't you just say you'll fire him or whatever if he doesn't call me back? Guy ends up calling me. He's kind of a pissant on the phone. I end up going to meet him, and it was a total waste of time. So that was lesson number one. Don't waste your time. Really, it's if an executive recruiter contacts you proactively, 100% of the time I would get back to them. And I've put videos out there. And as a matter of fact, this past week, if you're here with me live, toward the end of September when we're doing this live, I just put a podcast out about everything you'd want to know about working with executive recruiters. So maybe you want to check that out. It's on Apple. It's on all the platforms. But this was a waste of time. So I got my resume in order, and being that I was a very senior person, I'd run large practices, I'd sold consulting services, I've managed the delivery, I did just about every function in the company. I decided I would put wouldn't you know it, a target company list together of 50. I just said, you know what, I'm going to put 50 companies down. All these consulting firms that are similar to the one that I was working at that time. This company was, a small to medium-sized business. It was probably about 400 people when I left, 450 maybe. Well, we had let some people go because the market had melted down over the course of the few years between 2001 with the tech bubble and so on. But the next thing that I did was I put a company list together. This is really important. I didn't really care if they had any open positions. I just said, well, who are those companies? Let me have something where I can actually operate the search. And I'm not going to go based on what's available. And you got to remember now, I knew nothing about recruiting, and I knew less about job searching at that time. I had never recruited a day in my life, so I didn't really know how that worked because I was an IT and management consultant. But I put together a list of companies. I got to 50. I said, I'm going to stop. And now I'm going to start looking at, do I know anybody who works at these organizations? And for some of them, I knew people. But I did not care about the role. And this is really important that you understand this. And I'm going to explain to you what transpired because I didn't care about the role. So I started looking at these organizations. And then what I did, just to make sure that I found enough organizations, I started looking at open positions. I didn't look at open positions to apply. Now, you have to remember something. This is 2003. LinkedIn did not really exist. It was a, figment in that guy's head. It didn't really roll out until 2004. And so I'm looking for a job, and all I have at my disposal are like websites. I don't know if the monsters were available back then. Maybe they were career builders, or you could look on a company's website, which is what I did. And I looked on those, I located the positions, but I didn't apply to any. And even though I found some that I thought I was a perfect match for, but I didn't apply. I just used them to grow my list of companies. So I looked for open and publicized positions for the sole purpose of augmenting my target company list, because I didn't want to apply online. Even back then, I wanted to call somebody to see if I knew somebody. And I had managed a lot of people and worked with a lot of people. I had peers in the consulting space. I had managed thousands of people at this point in my career. So I had a pretty huge network, and I hung on to everybody's phone number and anybody's email address that I had. So I was just trying to build a company list, and I used the open positions to say, oh, I didn't know that company existed, so now I'm going to add it onto my list. But before I do anything, I'm going to figure out if I know somebody there. But we couldn't triangulate like we can now with LinkedIn, where people are continually updating where they work and what they do and who they're connected to. I had none of that at my disposal. All right, so it's even easier for you now to be able to determine these things, and not to mention find companies. All right, so then what I did, so I made the target company list. I swept the online systems, and then I put together some additional companies on the list because of the open positions. And then what I did was I looked through my phone book. So we had cell phones back then, of course. I kept, I had Microsoft Outlook, so I had people's names in my contact list, and I just printed out my Microsoft contacts, and I actually looked to see where were people, if I kept that information, whose phone number did I have, where were my best relationships. I started with the most senior people, and then I worked my way down kind of the totem pole, so to speak. But I made a list of people, so separately from the companies, because now I needed to cross-reference them. And then guess what I did? I actually called them. Now, this is a big deal because what most of us do is, number one, we're reluctant and we don't want to call people because we don't want to network with them. And a lot of the times we're sending emails to people we haven't talked to or even people we don't know. But I'm just talking about people that I know. I hung on to everybody's name. Even people who I didn't have their phone number. I talked to people who did, and I built a very, very long list of people. And I literally block time on my calendar. I'd get up in the morning, I'd squeeze the orange juice, make the latte, maybe I'd do a workout, and then I started calling people. And it was my goal to line up these things: coffees, lunches, dinners. Okay, so I literally said, I'd get somebody on the phone, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? Hey, have you heard from so-and-so? Have you heard from so-and-so? Have you heard from so-and-so? Do you know where they are? Let me know where they are. Do you have their phone number? No, that's okay. Don't worry. Where? Just give me the company name. You know they're at that company? I would call the company. I didn't care. I did whatever I had to, but I was working the phone because talking to someone actually allows a lot of great things to happen. Where sitting behind a computer and surfing on the internet isn't gonna get you what you need. Good luck's not gonna happen to you by just doing that. Sure, elbow grease, research, all that's good, but when you start getting together with people and then they would invite other people, and they would refer me to other people, and so on the chain went. Now, what actually happened was, I was in a coffee shop on Lake and LaSalle. I'll never forget, this was a Starbucks. I went to go meet with somebody who was one of my direct staff reports. He worked with me a number of years. I said, let's get together, a coffee. Maybe we could roll out the lunch. I'm coming from such and such. Why don't you duck out of work? Come across the street. I'll meet you there. I'm sitting, now I had lined up all these coffees, lunches, dinners. I'm sitting in the coffee shop with him, and in walks two other women who used to be on my team that I managed their roles. And they walked in, and I said to Katie and Jana, that's who it was, I said, hey, how you guys doing? How do you like that company that I served as a reference for you both? They said, yeah, everything's going great. I said, you really like the company? They said, yeah. I said, they got any, senior positions there for a guy who doesn't want to work really hard? Maybe, I don't know, you can connect me with the recruiter. Before I left the coffee shop, my phone rang, and it was their recruiter who said, we'd love to talk to you. Can we set up a time? All right, so now I happen to be sitting talking to one person, and two other people walked in the coffee shop. Now, I understand you're going to say, well, Andy, I live in rural Pennsylvania, and I don't have a Starbucks on the corner. I get it. But at least can you be on the phone? At least can you do your best to try to be as active as possible in connecting with people, because good stuff just sort of happens. So all of this stuff, it only took me a week of this because I had enough interviews after doing this for a week with, 10 coffee meetings, 5 lunches, and a couple of dinners is basically what I spent. And this was only the first week in November in 2003. So I gave myself 10 clean months of absolutely no thinking about work. And then I said, when November rolls around, I will start looking for a job so that I could try to line one up by January. And that's what happened. So within the first week, I was able to come up with enough interviews. Now, while I was doing that during that week, when I wasn't having coffee or lunch or dinner with somebody, I was doing this. I went back and I revisited the open positions that caught my eye. And then I had a better understanding of who might work at the organization, but there was this one company, it's called Knightsbridge. It's now part of Hewlett-Packard, I believe. And there was a vice president of emerging markets. So they were looking for somebody who actually could come in and run their emerging markets, and then they listed the industries that they had on the website, and there was media, entertainment, there was a bunch of other stuff. Now, with the previous consultancy that I worked for, the reason this caught my eye is because I managed the largest business unit in my organization, where I had business services, media, entertainment, communications, and a number of other industries that were thrown together in a cluster that I managed the profit and loss of that unit. was responsible for the selling and the marketing and the delivery of this. So I opened up the position. I didn't know anybody there. I decided, all right, I'm gonna go in through the applicant trashing system, although I didn't know it was one of those at the time. It was literally my first experience with putting my resume into an applicant trashing system. And I went through like the first couple of boxes and I said, oh dear Lord, this is for the birds. I'm not doing this. So I exited out. And I looked at the company's phone number and I called the general number and I said, my name's Andy. I'm trying to apply for a job that I'm, absolutely perfect for. Can you give me the name or send me to the person who's in charge of recruiting for this position? Seconds later, Trudy picks up the phone. Great voice. It's Trudy in recruiting. Hey, Trudy, my name's Andy. The reason I'm calling you is I was looking at this position on your website. There's a problem with putting it into the applicant tracking system. I'm wondering if I could just send it to you. And by the way, while I have you on the phone, could we talk for a few minutes? Right, so I was ready for any possibility. The voicemail, the general mailbox, the shoot me an email with your whatever, and it didn't make any difference. I had no idea who Trudy was. There was nobody on LinkedIn named Trudy that worked at Knightsbridge. So she said, well, Andy, this is great. Why don't you tell me a little bit about you and why you think you're such a great match? So then I went into, well, I did this exact job at this company and it was at X millions of dollars of P&L and this and that. She says, tell you what, can you meet me for coffee in the morning? First thing. Sure. Zip down I went, right? So now I've got a couple of interview processes going and I'm maybe 10 days into my search. And so I go to meet her, then we go to meet some other people. Okay, so now I've got a few things running. There's the Fathom Solutions role, which was Katie and Jana who got me connected with their recruiter. There was the Knightsbridge role, and then there was another consultancy that I ultimately ended up getting a job. So I go through the interviewing process, and the book that I think, well, this wasn't written yet, but that is a great indication of exactly what I did, is this book, Never Eat Alone. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It is a wonderful book. It was written in 2005 by Keith Ferrazzi. It's really fun, and it's about networking. It's a great networking book. It might be my favorite networking book on the market. So then I go into the interviewing processes, and the book that I didn't have at that time, because I didn't write it yet, is Interview Intervention, which we give away for $7 if you want to get this. So I go through the interviews, and I didn't care what the roles were. And so the ultimate role that I ended up taking as I went through, so I went through my interviews, I tried to space them and sequence them so that I could do them all at once. I know that was a bit of a luxury, but I was also managing the timing with them. But the other thing that enabled me to do this was the job that I ultimately took. It was the lowest title. It was a director title. The other two were vice president titles that were running units. This was for a sales position. I was just interviewing for a sales position where I knew a number of the people that I used to work with at my previous organization. I liked the management team. I liked the fact that I had a lot of friendly faces there. And I ended up taking the lowest title, and it wasn't the lowest offer, but it was kind of a mid offer. But that's a bit of a misnomer too, because a lot of what I was going to earn was going to be based on commissions and other bonuses and other things. So, the salary, while healthy, was only a fraction of what I was ultimately going to take home. So here's what happened. I didn't care about the role. All I cared about was getting in a company. And I had faith in myself that I would figure it out and we would assemble what that role ultimately looked like. But what ended up happening was I ultimately was able to sequence it or time it so that I was getting all the offers within a similar time frame, and I kept communicating to the other organizations, hey, I'm about to go for my final interview with. Hey, I just received an offer. So when I talk to you about making sure that you're communicating along the way, this became a vital piece because, now you got to remember, I earned zero, right? I've been out of work for 10 months. So you would think, well, you don't have any leverage. No, my leverage was my ability. I knew I was going to kick it in the butt, whatever it was that I decided to take. But I liked the guys who were running this company. It was about 120 people. And the one thing that I noticed, and the reason that I took this job, aside from the friendly faces and the other things that were around, but I didn't know any of the management team. The one thing that I felt was that they were the ones who were the least mature, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because that presented the greatest opportunity for me to create the role that I ultimately wanted in the biggest way that I thought I can help them. So what did we do? We set up a compensation structure. We set all this stuff up as if I was going to be a salesperson. Now, while I'm going through this, I sent them all thank you emails. Thank you. I literally hand wrote all these thank you cards. I mailed them out right before I got the offer. And I made sure that they were going to get them before I got the offer. So I sent them all the handwritten thank you emails. Now remember, we were all going in the office. This was the kind of culture where people were in the office, or they were on the site where they were consulting, or the business developers, of which I was going to be, was either in the office or I was with, boots on the street trying to make sales. And so when I got into the office on the first day, I made it a point to go to all 9 of the people that I interviewed with to say hello and thank them. I went into every person's office, and every single one, 100% of them, had my card on their desk, and every single one of them said something along the same lines. And I said, hey, that's so great that you have my handwritten card. They said, oh yeah, I never got one of those before, right? No one ever sends those. Right. So the little touches, and I know we live in a different time now, and people are remote and all that stuff, but these are little things that there's still opportunities to do some act of kindness that connects you with them. All right. So now I get in there. So I had no interest in being a salesperson. I had interest in helping them with their whole marketing and sales engine. They didn't have a marketing person. The sellers didn't really know what they were doing all that much. I didn't care about that because I saw possibility. So I went into the chief operating officer, his office, and my boss, who was the senior vice president of sales, my direct boss. And I said to the two of them, okay, this is great. I'm here now. And this whole sales pitch that you use, that you try to convince large-scale Fortune 100, 500, Fortune 2000 companies that we're good problem solvers and that's why they should hire us, that's not going to work. So I have an idea. I want you to hear me out. So I said to him, I'll tell you what, right now you pay me on like 4% commission for everything I sell. You pay me a hefty salary. You got other things that I negotiated into my package, and I have an idea. I'll tell you what, you give me a week, 1 week, the first 5 days. I don't do anything related to sales, and because I think that I could have a more macro effect on what we do that changes our ability to actually make sales. And the COO said, well, you mean like email marketing? We tried that. It's like, 1%. I was like, no, forget that. Let me actually show you how to market, and I'm going to put together a few things that I feel we could sell. And we have leads that we go to market with, solution packages that we go. And I don't know what those are, but I need access to this person and this person and this person. And if I could have an hour or two of their time and they could do a little homework for me, I can come to you with a plan of how I would approach this first year. They said, go ahead and do it. So I created basically 3 different consulting solution offerings, and then ultimately convinced them. I said, forget the contract I signed. Let's put a new one together. I'll tell you what, I'll cut my commission rate in half if you give me every dollar we sell of all 3 of these solutions that any salesperson sells. They thought this was a good deal, and I'm already ringing in the cash register. So ultimately, that's what happened. We left my salary the same. We changed my entire job description and the approach. So basically what I was in charge of was solution development, product development, and marketing. And so I ultimately showed them how to put consulting solutions together. And then I said, and if you give me a couple of dollars, I could get somebody to research, the 100 banks and 100 the financial services banks and insurance companies. Let's go to 200. I have marketing campaigns. Within the first month, all this stuff was ready to go, and we had 80 callbacks of 200 outreaches because of the techniques that I used from a marketing standpoint. If you're interested in that, I'm happy to talk about that in the Q&A. But the point is, from a job searching standpoint, I didn't care so much about the role I was getting into. And I realized not everybody has this luxury and not every organization is as malleable as this one was. But the point is, I was more concerned with getting in the organization where I could make the biggest impact and then sell them on my ideas. I didn't want to, I thought about doing this in the recruitment process, but I needed to expedite this because I ultimately wanted to work there no matter what my position was. And I had some timing issues with the other organizations. They wanted responses too. So anyway, so I changed my role during the first week, and you would be very surprised at how many organizations are willing to do this. Now, for those of you in the boot camp, in my job search coaching program, my job search boot campers, there is a video and a technique and tools and a matrix and other things that are in there that help you shape this. What I did after I started is what I teach you in my premium program, how to do when you're negotiating your new role and how to show value to the employer. But it's the same kind of thing that I did there. And then if you want to know how all this turned out, because I was damn committed to getting all this done in under 30 minutes, is I ended up working there. I ended up working there for 11 months only because the organization, unbeknownst to me, was about to sell itself to a large company, to a large organization. And the owners were going to make a lot of money. And I had a hefty salary. There was a lot of money that they were going to owe me in the future. So they gave me a couple of options to change my position that were more palatable for them from an economic and a sales standpoint. And I told you the whole story in number 10, how to change your life when you hate your options. So I got down to the end, and the way this story ends, I go through this with you of they gave me some options of different roles, even though I was very successful in the job, but I didn't like the options they gave me, so I created a new one, which was to open up Mile Walk, my executive search firm. So I ended up opening up Mile Walk. I had never recruited a day in my life, but I turned it around and I said to the CEO, I'm going to open up a recruitment firm. That's what I decided to do. I'd like you to be my first client. And that's ultimately how Mile Walk was born. And that's ultimately what led us here. While I was a recruiter for another 15, 18 years, the Mile Walk Academy was born in 2015 because that was overlapping with my executive recruiting work. And that's what brought us together today. So I hope you enjoyed that story. So I want you to think about, okay, bad use of your time, executive recruiters. Target company list will help you navigate the search. It's more important than the role. It supersedes the role. You join a company, you don't join a job. And you would be surprised at how great, organizations that are really great, what they will do to elevate the people that work there. I search for positions, but not to apply. I search for positions to augment my target company list. I did revisit that and got an offer from one of them, but I also broke the rules because I didn't want to put my resume in an applicant tracking system. And by the way, there are no rules when you're job searching. All right, I made my people list from my phone book, but I didn't start just calling anybody. I started calling people that I knew that were associated with the companies that I wanted to get into. And then what I did, called everybody, coffees, lunches, dinners. I don't care if you have Zoom coffee. Do something where you're talking to people. I revisited the open positions to see if there was any I could circle back to get introduced from or to. Had the interviews, got the offers, didn't care about my role, got in and changed the landscape, and then ultimately 10, 11 months later, sort of forced out, started Mile Walk. The rest is history. I hope you enjoyed it. 28 minutes. I'm living right today. I am living right. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you got value out of that and you can apply that to your own life, click the thumbs up button. Please make sure to share this. A lot of people need job searching help. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you're not following me on TikTok, my new favorite platform, let's get connected there too. Okay. And if you're here with me live, we're going to the Q&A. If you're watching this on the recording, I'll see you next week. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I never told that story before. True story. 100%. All right, so what do we got here? Mom is in the house. Aline, Harish, Johnny, Stevens, Kurt. Sonny, what's up, buddy? Alicia with the fancy spelling, my boot camper. Johnny Stevens, what's up, buddy? How do I vet a third-party recruited position for contract to direct hire for stability, opportunity to go direct hire? Don't want to leave a good thing for a question. Okay, so first thing is, if you don't want to leave a good thing because you are currently either under a contract or you're working full-time somewhere, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't even consider that if it's a contract because it's only a contract. So one of two things is going to happen. One of a couple variations of these, but you're going to get into the contract. You might get converted. They might not fulfill the entire contract. They might get to the contract at the end and say, thank you for your services, Johnny Stevens. We're done now. It's up to you to gamble. So when you say, for stability, I've given you a lot of the questions that I would be asking organizations. One of the more recent videos and sessions that I had with you on in the public was like 28 great questions to be asking employers right now. And a lot of those you can ask to the third-party search firm or what I'm guessing is a staffing firm, which is different than an executive recruitment firm, or they might have different arms. But this is about your requirements, what you want. If there's money considerations, there's benefits considerations, which you may or may not be getting. So going back to the formulas that I've given you before about asking the right questions there. Gary, how you doing? Hope you're well. The Mile Walk Academy, yes. Deb from Princeton, New Jersey. Good to see you. Mark Manzanares, my boot camper. What's up, buddy? Solitaire. Andy, I got a job already thanks to your how to get the job after being rejected wisdom. Folks, if you have not seen this video, every week, I get no less than a half a dozen emails or comments on the YouTube channel or something like this. Solitaire, thank you for this. But it is about when you don't get the position, but you've established a relationship with them to the point where you've gone through the interviewing processes or the recruitment process, and it just didn't work out. Maybe they chose a different candidate. Maybe you didn't quite have enough experience. They chose somebody else. Maybe somebody just edged you out. Maybe they balked. Now, balk means they didn't actually fulfill the position at all, decided to put it on hold or something like that. But Solitaire, I love it. Thank you for coming by. Sanyam, 2 a.m. in Australia. Can we give Sanyam, I hope that's how you pronounce your name, a huge shout out and a big live office hours hug, even though it's a Friday, for being up in the middle of the night with me. You have no idea how jazzed I get. Number one, I'm always sleeping at that time, except when Harley and my missus wake me up. But I love it. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for your attention, and I especially find it overwhelmingly awesome for somebody who's up in the middle of the night, or what would be my middle of the night. Terry, how are you? Terry Washington. Mathira from Sweden, great to have you. Well, it's probably cocktail hour for you. Robert Hamber from Mexico. Aline, it's noon now in London, Ontario. I love it. All right, so you're an hour ahead. Linda, how are you doing? Ian, Joy from Indy. Jared Oliver, my man. How you doing? Okay, what do we got here? Baby girl, what's up? Questions. Beth, how are you doing? Still in Florida. I miss you, Beth. I do. I miss you. Hope you're doing well. Elena, you are a leader. Hey, Andy, how do you overcome that imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome that might prevent you from applying for positions or get you to think you don't have the required skills? So this is a great question, and I want to say a couple things. Number one, most of the time, I'm just going to say most because I don't want to say always or never, right? I don't love those words. But a lot of the times, we are so reluctant to reach out to others for help. So wait, so let's not even get to the imposter syndromes because this all goes together. I was doing a coaching session. I did one a few days back, early in the week, Tuesday. So 3 days ago. And Eliza, one of my beloved boot campers and leaders, she and I were talking about some stuff. And she sent me an email the next day, and it was a networking email. She had reached out to somebody, and I was really encouraging her. I was like, this is in your head. You got to get in motion. You'll be amazed. Reach back to people you worked with and so on. She sent me this email that said, Andy, oh my God, I'm sure you're going to want to see this. And it was basically, she reached out to a person she used to work with. That guy happened to be at a company she was targeting, and he forwarded or knew somebody at the company and forwarded this glowing recommendation. I could not recommend her any higher, that kind of stuff. And it's really amazing to me. You're never going to know this stuff unless you put yourself in motion. All right, so now I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to network your way into opportunities, boss hunt your way into opportunities. And the one thing that I would say to you is the imposter syndrome is something that you have to work your way out of. We don't change our thoughts by thinking. We change our thoughts by doing, right? So you have to rep something to get yourself to believe you can or believe you are. And the evidence is what substantiates that and helps you get rid of the imposter syndrome. If you're looking for more on that, I have a video actually on YouTube about how to change your thoughts and build self-confidence. I would highly recommend you watch that. I think that might have been the January 1st video because I wanted to get us out with something motivational this year. And so check that out. But ultimately, I mean, the encouragement that I would give you is, number one, get in motion and you will start to see the results. If you are getting interviews, I would say to you, you're qualified, or at a minimum, the people think you have enough to offer that they want to speak to you to investigate more. And the other thing that I would encourage you to check out is how to start your job search in the right place. There's a video on the YouTube channel where you can access that, where I go into some of this I actually go into the imposter syndrome thing in there too. So give all that a try. And if you don't think you have the required skills, they're not going to think you have the required skills. I'm telling you, if you look at and create the opportunities by reaching out to people or even jobs that you know are open and try to boss hunt and other teammate hunt and other tactics like that, I think you'll surprise yourself. I really do. And lots of luck with that. All right. Hey, Michael Moore, Michael Tierney, my boot campers, look at that. Adam Stark, what's up? Harley says hello. I woke up to a bloody bedroom this morning. Harley was bleeding all over the place. It literally looked like it was a crime scene. All right. If I stated work times and days aren't ideal, do you negotiate them the same as you do for salary? I also, how to respond if they tell you the salary with the offer, do you negotiate the same? So